everybody. Wendie Lloyd here. I am here with pastry chef Maria Kemp, and we are coming to you with a 4-part series called Entrepreneurs Unplugged.
I like that name.
Me too.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to be breaking down through Maria's story what it's like to be an entrepreneur and how to be a successful entrepreneur. So today we're going to talk to you about getting started. So Maria, can you walk us through a little bit of your journey and how you got started as a pastry chef?
Oh, as a pastry chef?
As your business.
Oh,
Beyond
okay. I was going to say, well, that's a really long story.
Yeah, her story, by the way, is if you go to either one of our pages, we had done a live, and Maria shares the background of her story. Mm-hmm. So we're going to start with, how did you get started with Beyond Decadence?
Okay. How I got started with Beyond Decadence, I started in Illinois, I think it was 2014, and then had it going there for a while as a pop-up bakery. But when I had the opportunity to move, okay, I can't talk now, to move to North Carolina, I knew that I wanted to bring that same type of business model here. And the reason I wanted to do that is start with a pop-up, because if you remember from the first video series, I had a brick and mortar bakery right out of pastry school and had that for 2 years and went through a lot of family tragedy and so forth. I won't retell the whole story. Go watch the first video again if you want that whole story. But knew that I was moving to a city, a state, a part of the country that I'd never lived in before. And no one knew me here except for one person. So having a brick and mortar bakery under my belt, under my chef hat, from before, I learned a lot of what I did right, and I learned a lot of what I needed to improve upon.
Right.
So when I moved to North Carolina, I decided, okay, you know what? I already bought the T-shirt. I don't want to do bought the T-shirt, bought the cow, however that expression goes. But thank you. Been there, done that. I don't want to do the brick and mortar again. Let me carry that same pop-up style business model over, since the food laws in North Carolina are very, very friendly compared to Illinois to start a business in a very small scale. So the pop-up model evolved from that, but also I knew I'm coming to a state where nobody knows me. And even though I had visited here before I decided to move here and spent, 2 weeks, maybe longer, can't remember right now, and visited every bakery in town, I told them who I was. I was not on any, cloak and dagger stealth mission. Told them who I was if I got a chance to engage in conversation with them. And I looked to see what they were doing, researched and saw what people were doing that was popular, what seemed to be done well, and where there seemed to be areas of improvement. And I kept all that to myself. Because I did not want to be disrespectful to anyone doing business. Being in business is hard enough without us throwing shade at one another. But I took that and decided, okay, here's where I think there's a gap, or here's where I think I can bring something new to the marketplace. Now, with that, business coaches will always tell you, fine tune and zero in on your target market, on, everything that you know about what you're trying to do. And I understand that, but I thought, from my perspective, being a new business owner in a new city, new state, that I didn't know what I didn't know. For example, I tell the story quite frequently. One of my best sellers turned out to be lemon bars, and I almost didn't bring them to North Carolina.
They're delicious.
Thank you. And I almost didn't bring them. But then when I brought them and started making them and people start inhaling them, then they became one of my top selling items.
It's kind of your signature.
It is. And, I wouldn't have known that from reading a book or, just writing as a section of my business plan, make lemon bars.
Right.
I didn't know if they were going to sell or whether they wouldn't.
And I think in general, Maria, as, an entrepreneur, and any of you entrepreneurs watching can probably relate, when you come up with the idea, like you said, first of all, I want to back up a minute about when you're doing your research and you're looking at who's out there, who's already doing what I'm doing, how can I improve on that, what can I do different, because we're all unique, but respecting them.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
That you said, I wanted to emphasize that you're respecting their business model, and their approach, and you're just taking it and what applies to you and how you can refine it, how you can add your signature
Right.
to that. But also being open, like you said, it wasn't, line one of your business plan wasn't, okay, I'm gonna move to North Carolina, I'm gonna make lemon bars.
Right.
So we have to be open,
Mm-hmm.
right, to learning as we're doing and growing.
Yeah, and I've evolved a lot, since then, just through a lot of, learning and trial and error, which we'll talk more about later.
Mm-hmm.
But I started with things that I thought that people would like because I didn't know. For example, here's a great example. In Illinois, we'll call it the North, people,
Midwest.
Okay, thank you, yeah, Midwest.
I'm from there too.
Yeah, I know. People love red velvet cake.
Yes.
And I thought, moving to the South, it was a slam dunk in Illinois to be a slam dunk down here. Well, I didn't know in the South, people are kind of burnt out on red velvet cake. So if I would have, focused in on that as being one of my best-selling items, I'm going to make red velvet everything, I probably would have been in a lot of trouble. So, just fine-tuning and figuring out the items. And that was why I started with the pop-up, because after already having had, that was tricky.
That was a lot to say.
It was. A brick and mortar bakery, I said, there's no way I'm going to move to a new place and open up a brick and mortar and pay $3,000 or $4,000 a month when I'm not sure what the people really want.
Right.
Because the market is already well served. If you want a cupcake, if you want a cupcake, or you want a cake that looks like a duck, or one that has fire rockets shooting down the top, or cookies or bread, that's covered, and those aren't things I like to do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's not your niche.
It's not my niche, exactly. Can I do them? Yes, but I don't enjoy doing them, and so you would not feel or taste the passion in them because I don't enjoy it. Mm-hmm. So those were considerations that I took into account. I don't want to open a commercial place with tremendous overhead and not sure if what I have in my head, what I think my research is telling me, the gap that I see that exists that's not being served here, and here, if it's really going to work or not.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's being open and it's knowing your market, and you can do all the research you want online,
Mm-hmm.
right? We have all kinds of information, statistics at our fingertips. But the true value, the true market research is in the doing and being out there and listening to what your customers are telling you they want.
Right. And I learned so much in such a quick period of time. Like I talked about in our first video, one of my first pop-ups was at Bain Brewery, which is now, since closed. And you think, well, I've done 1 million pop-ups in Illinois. I did farmers market. I've had the brick and mortar. I know everything I need to know. You find out exactly how much you don't know. Everything from, your table, your display, to your packaging, to your labels, to the type of customers that you're going to get. You're going to hear what they like, what they don't like, what attracts them, what causes them, what repels them. That decision between going in and pulling out your wallet and opening it up, and between the wallet closing or not being pulled out at all. Mm-hmm. So that was why I started as a pop-up, because that gave me the chance to be in different settings, in different venues, in front of different customers. So now I've narrowed down, okay, these are my target market. These are people who are going to buy from me. And, these people probably not so much. But it gave me that exposure because, I don't know how long you guys have followed my story, but I did pop-ups everywhere from breweries to Burkdale Village, Williams-Sonoma, Williams-Sonoma in South Park. Oh, goodness, I have a whole list of them. 11 Lakes Brewery. I have a whole list of all the places I've done pop-ups.
Right, and I think it also gave you exposure for people to get to know you. Because as you said, you moved to a place where you knew one person. Mm-hmm. And so you had to put yourself out there. So it was kind of twofold, really, right? It was learning who's your market, who's your demographic.
Right.
But also getting you out there and people getting to know who you are.
Right, exactly, because I was an unknown, I was kind of the underdog moving to, some place where nobody knows my backstory, and everything that's brought me to this point. And more importantly, my story is important because it makes me who I am, but also my product.
Yeah.
You haven't tried my product.
Mm-hmm.
So in order for you to try my dessert, I had to give you those opportunities. And that's where I had to think, harder, or not, I had to think smarter and hopefully not harder.
Work smarter, not harder.
Even though sometimes it felt like it was harder,
right.
Because stop and think about it. Let me frame it for you. I didn't have a brick and mortar. There's no storefront. There's no retail location for you to stop by or for you to see all the time, or for those impulse buys.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So those are things that I had to think of. How can I work effectively within this type of business model?
Right. And we're going to go more in depth, really, into clarifying,
sure,
right, our message. We're going to do that. That's going to be number 2. Part 2. But tell us a little bit about where you're at now. So how have you evolved from the pop-up to where you're now? Because we're going to talk, going to go in depth about the clarifying that message. But
yeah, I think I jumped, sorry.
No, we're good.
From the pop-up, evolving from the pop-up, pop-ups are physically demanding, first of all, which, people don't always realize. You're hauling a table, then everything from the tablecloth to the decorations, and then finally the desserts, then a chair, then maybe a fan or a heater.
I used to see Maria, as she mentioned, she used to do a pop-up in Birkdale, and for those that aren't from here, Birkdale's, it's a village. It's just restaurants and shops and
apartments,
bars and apartments and things, and it's a pretty popular place in our area in Lake Norman. So Maria had her pop-up there, and I would go by and give her Saturday hug or whatever, and I'd see her out there, and she'd have your table, your everything. You had the tent, the pop-up tent. In the winter, she'd have her little heater, so you'd have to have the generator, all these things.
No, there was electric behind me.
So there was electric. Okay, so it was just the heater that you had. That was good. But it's Maria. It's by herself and all this stuff. And I know at times, I remember hearing, there'd be times different people would come by and help you after a while, after you got to know some people. But for the most part, you did all that yourself.
Yeah, myself.
So go ahead.
Yeah, and you imagine that, the 10 by 10 Coleman tent, well, it doesn't just magically put itself up or take itself down. So, transporting that and putting that up and breaking it down, out there with all these display pieces. The glass looked the prettiest. It's the most dangerous, but it looked the prettiest. But imagine taking that and multiplying that same thing, either the tent or minus the tent, times 100. I don't know. I was out there.
You actually did.
Yeah, I was out there on Friday and Saturday and Sunday in the winter, and then the summer for maybe 6 months each. I've lost count right now. But then Birkdale wasn't the only place I did that.
Right.
I did that at places some in Charlotte, but a lot around the Lake Norman area, because anytime there was an event and it was a vendor event, I'm like, okay, I need to do it. I need to go because that's going to give me exposure. One of the first outdoor events that I think I did was Taba Walk in August or September of 2017. So I'd only been here a couple months at that time, and it was hot. I had my tent, but it was hot. And that was, one thing I learned as I started, I learned a lot about doing the pop-ups, and just the weather plays in the South a very big factor in that, especially when you're doing desserts.
Yeah.
Now, if I were a snow cone vendor, ice cream, that would be different.
It'd be a different ballgame. So with the pop-ups and the burnout, essentially like burnout, which we're going to address that later in another episode as well.
So
but
come back.
You got to keep coming back. But where are you at now?
Where I'm at now is I don't do nearly as many pop-ups. Like I said, the pop-ups are physically exhausting, from lugging and just the outside and standing on concrete, and all that is hard on my body. Plus all the preparation of all the individually packaged desserts that takes an incredible amount of time. So I do very few pop-ups right now. I definitely don't do any more outside ones. The last outside one I did one in Charlotte. I got bit by a spider. So I was like, and it was hot. So I've been working toward that, and it's growing steadily, doing more catering. I always feel like I need to put the word dessert in front of it so people don't think I've moved into the savory side, because I have not.
Right, yeah.
But doing more catering. Now that catering can be for, private individuals having a function in their home, or, for corporate clients as well. Also, something I started marketing, because I've started getting requests for it, is private chef services. With the holidays coming, everybody wants to have the coolest party, and things like that. And if I can be part of that cool, I'm here to help you.
She's pretty cool.
Oh, geez, thanks. It's just the haircut. But private chef services can be anything from private baking lessons for 1 or 2 people. I'm not trying to recreate a huge class, but it would be in your home, in your kitchen, with using your tools, the things that you're most comfortable with.
Very practical.
Absolutely, and I think it's going to help you be more effective after I leave.
Yeah.
Instead of me bringing all the super cool stuff and then taking all that back when I leave. Yeah, because I'm not going to leave my stuff with you. And also the demos. Because people are having parties and they want to entertain their guests, and to have a pastry chef in your kitchen creating something before your eyes and interacting and engaging with your guest is pretty cool. Pretty cool. Yeah.
And I think too, the message, for it as an overall message for all entrepreneurs is learning what Maria's learned. You have to be open to growing, to evolving, right? Learning who's your market, learning, what are you capable, lack of a better word that's coming to me right now, but capable of doing effectively, putting out there effectively without the burnout, without, and really keeping yourself, the perspective of your own health, and that balance and that holistic well-roundedness that we all need.
And I think for any entrepreneur too, like you can take what I'm talking about with the desserts, saying with the pop-ups, I'm doing all these individually packaged desserts, which takes an incredible amount of time, to package each one. It takes more time than a lot of people think. But what happens when the weather is bad or the weather is hot? When the weather is hot for me, and if I do a pop-up, like I was sharing with Wendie, if there's an ice cream vendor or a snow cone vendor, nobody's buying any desserts from me.
Right.
They're going to be, getting those things to cool off. So the practical side is that I've put all this time, effort, and energy and money into all these individually packaged desserts. Well, what do I do when they don't sell? Right. The money and the product is lost. Right.
Yeah,
it's lost. It's lost, and people think, well, that's great. I'll eat your leftovers. Well, that is really sweet of you, but I'm in business to make some money. Not to not just to feed people free leftovers.
So you have to weigh. You have to weigh out. With the pros, the cons, the good, the bad,
and that's the reason for doing the transition away from the pop-ups, where the volume. And the traffic and the weather can be variables that are inconsistent and that you have no control over. Where when you're doing, the private chef services, whether it's the baking lesson or the chef demo or whether it's catering, that's all decided up front in advance, and it's all inside.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So you don't have to, you're not worried about the weather out there. Well, Maria, I want to thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
A little bit about getting started, and again, just to kind of wrap it all up, Maria came here not knowing anybody, came to North Carolina, so she really didn't know the market here. Right. She had to do her due diligence, as any of us entrepreneurs need to do when we're building and starting our businesses. Who's your clientele? Who's your market? What are their needs, and how are you gonna fix those needs, or how are you what are you going to offer and serve them?
And I've been surprised too, going back to the research side as we wrap it up, people that I thought would be my perfect customer didn't always turn out to be my perfect customer. Right. And I didn't know that until I just dove in and started paying attention
to doing that.
Yeah.
Which is going to lead into the episode number 2, which you'll see next week, is going to be clarifying that message, identifying, you know, what are the lessons learned, you know, and how do you really hone in on who is your ideal customer or your ideal client. So thank you for joining us, Maria. Thank you for sharing again. And we look forward to seeing you. We're going to be doing this every Sunday for 4 Sundays. So come back and join us for Entrepreneurs Unplugged.